Do I need to clap?
No, because it would be really complicated, I think. I think we thought of that kind of.
You are tuning to the Digital Economies Lab.
Welcome. I have here today with me Julie Gendron, who is an independent creative director. She's a strategist, designer, an artist. As an artist, is really interested in performance and performance video, sound, all things media art, atmospheric kind of work, installations. She's also worked with a really wide variety of cultural organizations, large and small. She was the programmer for Vivo. She has worked extensively on the Vukavu project, a streaming platform for independent media arts in Canada. Welcome to Artengine, Julie. How are you doing today?
Good, I'm good.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here. So, Julie, you've been part of the Digital Economies Lab project, working mainly on the offer need machine. But I wondered if we could start with the basics, back to the beginning, and you have a really wide variety of experience. So I'm wondering, what was it about the Digital Economies Lab that made you want to participate?
Well, honestly, in that point in time, I was thinking about going back to school and doing a master's in business. Because I have been thinking about how more artists could become or join or create the creative economies without being dependent on the granting system necessarily. And I had seen some examples along the way, and I was really interested in how, well, the bigger theory for me is that I want to see people create more art or crafts or whatever that it is that they do in order to allow them to become more thoughtful about their ability to think independently. And so in my grad work in 2005, I was looking at participatory design and how to get more artists to do, how to get more people to participate in sculpture and interactivity. And I did quite a few installations that were interactive at that point in time that allowed people to show them that they could draw or they could make sound or beatbox and all of these different things. With the naive theory that the more that they learn that they could be creative, that they would maybe become more participatory in their own communities and within their own economies. Instead of purchasing culture all the time, I wanted them to make culture, everyone, even if it wasn't like high-end art. Mm-hmm. And so seeing Digital Economies Lab and thinking about working with a bunch of different people about this was basically the perfect way for me to start moving towards. I don't really want to go back to school. I really don't want to, but I want to learn more of the skills around economics in order to assist art organizations more. So that's what I do. I do digital strategy. I do a lot of work around helping art organizations become more accessible by bringing on new tools or processes. And so the part that was missing was the economic part of it, to get more official ideas around it.
So the project that you guys were ended up being really a part of for the long arc of the DEL is really focused, I think, on individuals. obviously, there's the idea of addressing the individual artist, but then also the kind of existing digital infrastructure or existing infrastructure for the cultural world already of transforming organizations, small and large. Did you know, or was it really important to you that you were focused on those individual artists?
I didn't really know what I would be focused on. I tried not to make any kind of judgments about how I was going to become involved with or what I was going to take on with this group of people. I originally was just excited about meeting everyone when we first met in Ottawa. And, when we first started talking about all of these things, we weren't talking about any solid ideas of that included outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
It was more about how do we connect people. And I connect people in order to create more prosperity. And then connecting those people was thinking about how can we get artists who are also professionals in a lot of ways, or consultants that also work for art organizations. There's a thing that happens, as we all know, probably, that artists have a side job and then they have their professional job. They happen to be very good. Sometimes they work full time. And then there's art organizations that are looking for professionals like marketers, and they often can't find them. Like, we can't find each other. And so organizations go to these big agencies that have really very little idea about how nonprofits and artists work or art organizations work. And they provide really expensive solutions that often the art organization is trying to explain to them as they go along. That's not how we work. That's not how we work. And then it becomes very convoluted, expensive, and the goal in the end is not.
It's so hard to get the value alignment, and the story and context understanding coming from an small arts organization. The thought sometimes of working with consultants on a wide variety of things, but particularly around marketing or even organizational change, is so difficult because there's like, how much energy do we have to get them to understand the context of what an experimental independent arts organization does and is like.
Yeah, exactly. And those values, the alignment is really, really difficult because people get involved in art and community organizations for a very specific reason. And it usually doesn't have a lot to do with getting rich. And so, like a very concrete example right now is, for me, is when I need assistance with doing certain things. So sometimes I help create a website for an organization, but I need someone to do or research around the themes or the way that the design is going to work. And so right now I'm working with someone who is a craftsperson, but they are also very good at understanding design and the internet. And they will make money off of doing that. But I would have found them in the city unless we were on the board. We're on a board together, we share, but I never would have found them. And so I guess this was what the basic goal or the basic understanding about connecting people and, making it easier for people to work together and reach their goals was that kind of situation.
So I want to get you to describe the O&M project in a second, but I did want to touch on one thing, and we've mentioned throughout these interviews the notion of prosperity. And I wonder, for you, what does that mean, artistic prosperity?
For me, well, I enjoy doing my strategy and that kind of work. I really do, because I get to meet lots of wonderful people, and I really like to help people improve their organizations or do their project online. But for me personally, that prosperity means that I don't have to worry about money while I spend solid pieces of my time creating artworks. And It's really the last residency that I was able to go to, and residencies are awesome because you get to like do exactly that. Well, maybe you worry about money a little bit, but you get to go to a place and you concentrate on something and you create something and you get into that mindset and you're not worried about all the other stuff. So people that do it, like the people in the world that I've seen do it best. So the residency I went to was in Iceland, and it was in Seyðisfjörður, which is on the eastern side of Iceland, and it was for a sound art residency. But I was doing the video part with my partner Emma Hendricks, and what I saw is that Icelanders do this perfect thing. They are very creative. They all go to school to make music, like not all of them, but a lot of them, or do something else. But then they're also professionals. And it's just like an expectation. Like you're not meant to just be someone working in a company. You're also meant to be someone creating some sort of artistic form, and it often becomes music or oral, choral.
So can you describe the O&M project, the Offer Need Machine, as it is now, and sort of where you're headed?
Currently, we're in the middle of research and understanding who the people are that are going to use it. And so just the O&M stands for Offer Need Machine. And it's a theory so far that there would be some sort of digital tool that we would eventually create. And when I say we, I mean Macy and Kofi. That would allow people to connect online to offer 1 hour of service to another person in the arts, or they don't actually have to be in the arts, but they're an expert in the arts. They don't have to be an artist, is what I mean. And then from there, that person that offers an hour, and the amount of time is debatable still right now. That person can receive an hour of expertise from another person. It's not directly reciprocal. We're thinking that, like as an example would be potentially there is a consultant who's an expert in not necessarily marketing, but in trying to figure out audiences that an art organization might need. So someone in that art organization and an executive director might need this expertise. But maybe let's say it's a craft museum. So that executive director is probably also an artist who knows how to knit or print or do something like that, so they can offer something, that kind of skill, to someone that wants that. But the idea is that one person offers, and in order to receive, they have to offer first. And if we are not intending on facilitating long-term connections, this is not Facebook. This is not, we're just creating the spark.
Okay.
So the spark of that.
So it's almost like a little incubator of relationships, that the idea of you have to input something, whether right now the unit is an hour of time and knowledge and expertise that you might have, and you sort of put it into the system on offer for others. And then that allows others to kind of pick up. And it's not, like you said, it's not a one-to-one exchange. This is a sort of distributed idea of there being a kind of a network of possibilities for you to draw upon. And do you see it as, I hesitate to say transactional, but in the sense of if you put one in and then you take one out, are you sort of expected to be giving and receiving in alternating form? Like, is there supposed to be a kind of sum zero, do you think, for a participant?
Not necessarily. Someone, if they feel very altruistic, can go and give as much as they want, but they don't have to take anything back. But the idea is that you have to give first, because there's a whole set of values being created.
Yeah.
through this project. It's not just about this transaction, as you might say. It's not, yeah, like you say, it's not necessarily a transaction, but there's more to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's unique about this project is that we are expecting people to come to this. We haven't decided on the technology.
Yeah.
So to
We call
this
it a
thing,
system.
this
To the
machine,
system. Yeah, machine.
yeah, it's called a
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
A bit tongue in cheek when we say machine.
Yeah.
Um, Between Macy and Kofi, we have created a code of conduct that we work together with, an understanding of how we're going to work and what we want to achieve, and what we want to learn from each other. And we're going to carry this out into this machine that we create. So we are determining, we've talked to lots of people that are very generous with their time, lots of people that in the arts community or organizations who, you know, have a lot of valuable skills, are super smart, and give a lot. And so we've talked to them about how does trust break down for you? When do you stop volunteering? How do you ask for help? Like all of these different values. And then there's also a lot of other platforms out there, which, like I wouldn't say that they're my inspiration, so I wouldn't spend much time talking about them
Yeah.
necessarily, but they're really good to see how their workings happen on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also where trust breaks down for them and their communities. And so the idea is that when someone comes to O&M, they will actually have to commit to a certain value system, and that value system what we're going to try to do is normalize respect and care. So you can't be on there if you're going to take advantage of anyone. And we're also trying to normalize something that doesn't happen much anymore, especially because the internet and social media makes everyone jealous of each other. We're trying to normalize taking joy in other people's success. And that's the spirit that you have to come to in this, that you are actually trying to make other people's success. And that success is not limited, it's actually infinite, in the same way that people think about love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we can live together and all be successful. And so, and with that people have to know what their boundaries are. People have to self-reflect. People have to work on their trauma because there's a lot of it in this world. And people, yeah, I think I said this already, but people need to know what their boundaries are, and they need to know when to start saying no, or they need to know what the limit is of what they're going to give in that 1 hour. Going onto that platform means, or whatever it becomes, means that they're almost agreeing to in terms of service. That's very different than what you would a corporate terms of service where it talks about how don't sue us, or you can't sue us
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you're
Yeah. You
invincible.
have no rights. That's it.
Yeah,
You
so
are.
what we're saying is you have lots of rights and
Yeah.
you need to exercise them.
Yeah. It sounds the term idea of terms of engagement, although that sounds very worry for some reason, but that sounds more like it's not about service, but about terms of partnership or terms of relationships. Or I mean, I think it's really interesting the way that you're trying to practice a kind of care and trust in the development of the project, and how you're translating that over to embedding it into the sort of participant or user experience. What might be the interface, or how do you go about bringing participants into that? Is it sort of reading? Is it how are you trying out some of those ideas?
So, there's been a couple phases of this project so far, and the first one was just meeting these people before COVID came, and then COVID came, and the second phase was, where Artengine was able to help us facilitate users' interviews and talk to those people that I was saying, those generous people in the art sector, and I'm speaking mostly about the Canadian art sector, and looking at the organizations that do similar work. And so now we're in the third phase where we're again looking at how people use things And we haven't decided on how or what is going to happen, but I think that we're going to basically use the the agile type way of creating prototypes in order to test them, in order to run them by these people that still want to participate. And so we're not at this place where we're saying what can you do, because it's very complicated. Like, how do you take that? How do you take trust and try to put it into an app? I think we're going to get there, but we have about a year to do so.
I mean, it's a really interesting moment, of course, because trust is a hot word because of the crypto stuff, but it's like the opposite kind of trust. It's actually not trust, right? Like, the whole crypto structure is about no human trust, but everything determined. There is no room for trust, because you don't need trust anymore, because everything is determined by the code and the structure of this. And this is sort of the opposite play. And I wonder, you touched a bit, we don't want to dwell on like a critique of LinkedIn or anything like that, but what if you can think about what is different about this project as a network, like what is missing in existing networks that you're doing with this project?
I don't know really, like, if we compare kind of LinkedIn. Well, social media is doing kind of the opposite of what we're doing, and creating suspicion. Like, everyone becomes performative, I guess, when they're on social media, and I guess in the offer need machine, we're expecting people to be just themselves, genuinely themselves, and that we all make mistakes and that we're not perfect. And so that's a little bit different, if I think that's what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, you did touch on it in the sense of, looking at care and trust. And I'm not sure, I think there is this idea, I think with any design project, you're going through this process of, this is really unique, we need this, and then suddenly the next day you're like, oh, this is just like all these other things.
Right.
People are already sharing and caring for each other. Like, many of social media's worst parts amplify, performativity, sensationalism, all of these things. At the same time, they've been instrumental to social movements and care in the last year and a half, particularly. But I think both of us sense that maybe that's happening despite the infrastructure of the network. It's not encouraged by the network, but rather something that people overcome within the network to actually reach out and create those connections.
I think the important part is that we're making it so that it's fleeting in that 1 hour, and that you can back out of that relationship. I think a lot of other social media, because they have a business, you need to have this amount of users, and they need to stay online this amount, all these statistics and how it's supposed to work. And so their main goal is retention, whereas our main goal is not retention. Our main goal is, like I say, the spark of connection, passing on some really valuable information quickly. And then if it turns out to be really valuable, then you go offline, or you go onto your own little communication tools and create a longer term. So that brings up questions about how do we make sure they're still safe once they're off, and when is our responsibility stopped? Like,
well, ephemerality and even anonymity are both values. Well, anonymity in particular is a value. Privacy is something that we're losing, so we've lost. We lose yards of it every day. But the ephemerality of the interaction that you're about, the kind of spark, I think that's a really interesting condition to think of going into a network and participating in something that actually requires a fair amount of commitment in some ways to be involved, but can have these sort of fleeting elements in which one can come in and maybe once one is initiated over a certain period of time coming in and coming out, but allowing yourself to be there and available, but also be able to pull away.
Yeah, because I'm, like for an example, I'll just do it from my own point of view. The mansplaining thing is a real thing, right? And so me going on there and needing some advice from someone, I might end up with a mansplainer. But I can put up with that for an hour,
Yeah,
and shake my head at the end of it. But I don't have to have that relationship past that 1 hour. I can just totally,
yeah,
and I might still get some important information from that mansplainer. But um, but there's also something triggering about being mansplained too. So you know what I mean? And that happens with a lot of people from different backgrounds.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
Um,
I think that's an interesting scale of stake as well, and that idea, like the talking about the spark, that this is like where I'm not hiring you for a big contract in which 50% of it you've been explaining to me things I already know. We're engaging in a smaller thing, and there's much less at stake.
yeah, and hopefully if someone gets a dud hour, you know, maybe they can go and teach how to knit for one more hour to another person so that they can, get another hour that maybe feels better to them.
This brings up another design question from its relationship to previous and the existing social network condition, which is one of sort of rating and evaluating. Have you guys
Yeah.
had discussions around that? We actually haven't talked about that in any of the O&M sort of interactions we've had, but that's a rather big one. We have this expectation of being able to rate someone, but that is this whole intense performative thing.
And the language people use is also like, I think rating is really important, but it's, um, I have a word in my that I want to say, but it's not the best one. It's distorted really quickly. I think that that's part of the conversation also that we'll need to have in terms of like how do people find out what they need. But I think that rating systems often work on 1 star to 5 stars. Do you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And
They're
it's
flattening experience.
it
Yeah.
totally flattens it out.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm thinking off the top of my head, it's more like, can we think about rating in terms of really constructive
Yeah.
terminology?
Yeah.
Um, there is always a way if something doesn't work for you, if you don't like something, there's always a way of describing it so that it doesn't become personal. But because people just don't mesh sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Like they just come from very different backgrounds. Within Canada, there's this idea that there's this long, long ago idea that we're all just going to become the same. But we have so many cultures and so many ways of talking to
Yeah.
each other within like innumerable ways within
Mm-hmm.
this huge country. And it doesn't have to be aggressive
Yeah.
to explain why they don't mesh. And it's okay not to mesh.
Yeah, I think that will be a really interesting design challenge too, to think about both the pace at which one would provide sort of metrics for it, like an idea of a star system, but is it, can you create something that's a little bit more abstract and obtuse, that isn't look like it's a 5-dimensional object that gives you some sense of different factors that the person experiences. Like, what do you think about the different kinds of language in which one would, how does it fit for you? What did you value? And then also the sort of longer form idea, the way we might tell stories about experiences, share those stories to get at the nuances of experience. So that seems like that'll be a really exciting part of the project. I know for us here at Artengine, thinking about metrics is something that I'm really kind of obsessed with over the years, because how do we find ways to connect these kinds of very quantitative factors that determine so much, and qualitative experience, and find new and innovative ways to talk about what we measure and see in the world.
Especially because metrics are born out of capitalism, and capitalism is meant to just get to the very sell more product, right? It doesn't matter who you're actually destroying in the pathway of that.
Yeah.
You
well,
know?
The counterpoint, though, but would be that metrics in the empirical sense are also really part of research and in not just science, but research in a broader sense of like what is, really, like how do we put things into a framework where not that they become a truth, but they can be more substantial and that. But I agree. There's certainly, the last 10 years have capitalism and metrics have been a incredibly powerful toxic combination.
But I think, that is a huge design challenge that we have. The thing I think that we are continually thinking about today and the days and weeks that come is how do we onboard people and how do we connect those people responsibly? Because there's lots of people that don't want to work with other people. And, there's lots of people that want to work with people that they relate to in some way. So, like, how do we, because there's also identity and self-identification in all of that. And there's lots of people that don't like to self-identify, but still want to be within their community. Right? So that is the big design question at the moment.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting year for the project for sure. I wonder if we could talk a bit about where you have drawn inspiration from and where you see care and trust working in networks, whether that's within the cultural sector or broadly in different kinds of communities.
The top of mind thing for me is Art City, which is an organization in Winnipeg that is in the West Broadway area of Winnipeg that has maybe lower income, very highly dense apartment buildings, and lots of children that need to maybe keep busy after school. And so Art City basically invites children in from the neighborhood to come to drop in to do art. And that's within that. So, children have a lot less baggage than we do. They're much kinder. I mean, they can be very mean too. But I think that's because they're testing boundaries, right?
Yeah.
And so, but within that organization and how it works between after school until 7 o'clock or that time where you have to start thinking as a child to go home and get ready for bed or do your homework. They have guest artists come in. They have so many art supplies. They have so these children come in and then there's older children that help out the younger children, and they all just have a really good time and play together. And then, around, I don't remember what time it is, but around 6 o'clock, food is served, no questions asked. You eat if you want, if you don't. Sometimes adults come in, that just need to be with other people from the community. And it's just a very safe place and very real without all of that baggage. So that's an inspiration in terms of how people approach each other. And then, inspiration can come from I was very, in the 90s when the internet first came out, there was a belief system that these networks could create a sort of decentralization, and there was a really new communities were coming together, finding each other with similar backgrounds, and sharing information and it was during that time coined the gift economy. And so since then, corporations have taken over, and you can see that gift economy is still happening, but mostly. But it was really about, that's when people started questioning copyright. Well, why does copyright have to exist? Why can't we have copyleft, where we have certain different ideas around what can be shared and what can't be shared? And so I guess that's some of the inspiration, just like gifting and generosity creates more success in everyone.
Well, this has been a great conversation. I wonder, just to close out, I know that the Offer Need Machine found support from the Canada Council for this next phase. So can you tell us a little bit, just before we leave each other, what the next while holds for the Offer Need Machine?
At the moment, we're very busily trying to digest the research still from phase 2. And then we have to create a list of design questions, which of course we touched upon a couple of them, and then find the solutions for that. We have to finally make some decisions. There's just been beautiful kind of time of incubation, but then there's this decision making, and especially when it feels like it costs so much to make those decisions, there's always that just like hesitation or just anxiety around those final directions, right?
Yeah.
So, the group of us have to sort that out, and then we're gonna, obviously we can't do everything because we have other projects going on, but we're gonna bring in designers and also do outreach to find other people that can basically help us through their understanding of the world, give their opinions about what we're doing. A large part of this is basically user testing, which is that terrible user word, but it's about human-computer interaction, basically, and user groups, and coming back to the people that we already spoke to.
Participants. They're participants.
Participants.
That's a better word than user.
So get more participants on making sure that we are talking to many. Like when we first came up with the first group of participants, we really thought about, are they older, are they younger, are they a person of color, are they new to Canada, so we tried to balance that out, and so continuing to balance that out with even more voices. And depending on COVID, we're hoping to travel and come together to Ottawa at Artengine to do some more work around that and create some sort of prototype. So we have hiring to do also.
Yeah.
It's all exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I think I really respect a lot of the work that the whole team has done with the Offer Need Machine, and seeing the kind of care with the development and the patience to allow different ideas to come forward. I think it's a really great and exciting time to get into this moment where you do have to leave behind a whole bunch of ideas, but new ideas come from actually putting those materials together and seeing what happens when you start to experiment with these things. So I think it's going to be a really interesting year, and Artengine really looks forward to continuing to support the project in any way we can. So
great. We look forward to it. Well, we look forward to seeing people in person, really. In the same room. Yeah, so it's been pretty amazing just having the energy over the internet with Maisie and Kofi. I can't imagine what we could do if we could actually just meet with each other.
Yeah, I know. Well, I look forward to that. We look forward to having you here in Ottawa sometime. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks for the opportunity. Cut.